And now it has begun. Checkpoints in between the states themselves. Will this mean that moving forward, as the coronavirus epidemic gets worse, the pandemic gets worse, we will actually see states set up real border crossing checkpoints? We're almost at that point. Dare I say, I think it's fair to say we're actually there. But will it escalate? I don't know. Rhode Island wants to quarantine anyone coming from New York. So what does that mean? The National Guard is going to be checking bus stations and train stations. If you're coming off, they're going to check your IDs just like any other international border. And if you're driving in with New York license plates, they will stop you and collect your information. Now, it's not a hard restriction, like you need a passport to get in certain countries. But this is the beginning of something truly incredible. The states themselves locking down borders. Think about all the people who called and clamored for open borders. Now we're seeing this is beyond a complete reversal. This is a lurch super far in the complete other direction. In Europe, in the Eurozone, the Schengen zone. We just saw a post on Reddit where they're celebrating the anniversary of the Schengen zone, where you could be in Europe and freely travel to any other country without needing a passport. But now, amid the pandemic, countries within the Schengen zone are closing their borders, something they haven't done in decades. Checkpoints being set up. And I wondered, will the United States see this kind of restriction in our own country? And dare I say, it has begun. From Patch, coronavirus in Rhode Island. Anyone coming from New York ordered to quarantine. They say, the number of cases of the new coronavirus spiked by 33 on Thursday, Governor Gina Raimondo announced. Starting immediately, anyone coming into the state from New York State will be mandated to self-quarantine for 14 days, the governor said. Nearly half of the nation's cases of COVID-19 are from New York, particularly the New York City metro area, Raimondo said. And the number of cases is rising every day because of its geographical proximity to Rhode Island. This measure is necessary to keep the infection rate down, she said. No matter how you come to Rhode Island, bus, car, train, plane, you are ordered to quarantine for 14 days. In my judgment, this is the most prudent form of action in light of the crisis. I'll tell you what, that's not enough. It's not going to do anything. If people can come from New York into Rhode Island, there is nothing you can stop there's nothing you can do to prevent the spread of COVID-19 coming into Rhode Island. You can tell them to quarantine, but they're on the trains with everyone else. They're at the gas station with everyone else. They're pumping gas, same as everyone else, and people will touch that same pump in moments later. And then they will get infected. The only real thing you can do, if you're really concerned about it, is shut down your borders, but we can't do that. I guess is the next best thing, but I don't think it's going to have any real effect. They say. Members of the National Guard will be stationed at train and bus stations to gather the contact information of anyone coming in from New York. In addition, the Rhode Island State Police will station troopers at the state border to flag down vehicles with New York license plates. The information collected will be used only for contact tracing by the Rhode Island Department of Health. This is different. This is unusual. This is radical, Raimondo said. I don't want anyone to panic. If anything, Rhode Islanders should breathe a sigh of relief. We are doing things to keep ourselves safe. This will do nothing. The order expands on Raimondo's orders from earlier this week, requiring anyone flying into the state, regardless of where they are coming from, to self-quarantine for 14 days. Members of the National Guard have been stationed at TF Green Airport to collect the contact information of travelers. The order is not expected to have any impact on interstate shipping or commerce, Raimondo said, since it is aimed at people who are coming to live or stay in the state. State Police Colonel James Manny said troopers will only stop passenger vehicles, no tractor trailers or other commerce vehicles. Drivers will be asked where they are going, as well as for their address in Rhode Island and other identifying information. This is an unprecedented event in our history, Manny said. We are engaged to help with the public health and safety. We fully realize that there is a lot of stress and anxiety at this time. And I assure you that all troopers will be polite, professional, and treat people with dignity and respect. Dr. Nicole Alexander Scott, the director of health at Rhode Island Department of Health, said that the department is fully aware that there are more cases in Rhode Island than have currently been confirmed by testing. Because the state is still ramping up its testing ability, testing is currently being prioritized for those who are deemed to be most at risk. Yeah, we get it. They do this with everyone. High risk testing only. Let's talk about borders. All right. I'm not gonna go through the rest of what they're talking about in terms of their internal goings on, because the bigger issue for me is the impact we're seeing. What's funny is that as Trump is trying to secure our borders, we see the far left come out and claim Trump is just trying to militarize the border. It's the far right. Bleh. Leaked documents show Customs and Border Protection requested more than 1,500 extra troops to guard the Canadian and Mexican borders. The Nation reports the coronavirus is Trump's latest excuse to militarize the border. No matter what Trump does, they will scream that he's wrong, even when every other country is doing something similar. And as we look to the far left screeching once again about border security, what if I were to tell you that Mexico is actually attempted to secure its own border from us? That's right. Mexican citizens are upset that Americans are crossing the border amid this pandemic. From the BBC, Mexicans demand a crackdown on Americans crossing the border. Oh, I'm sorry, but Trump's racist when he does it. Mexico isn't? Or are they? Are the Mexicans here demanding no more Americans come in our country? Are they being bigots and racist too? Or is it an issue of national security in a pandemic? You tell me. The BBC reports residents in Sonora, south of the U.S. state of Arizona, have promised to block traffic into Mexico for a second day after closing a checkpoint for hours on Wednesday. They wore face masks and held signs telling Americans to stay at home. Mexico has fewer than 500 confirmed COVID cases, and the U.S. has over 65,000. Well, this story is from the 26th. Okay, so it's from yesterday. We have over 80,000 now. The border is supposed to be closed to all except essential business, but protesters said there has been little enforcement and no testing by authorities. Let me tell you something. The number of cases in the U.S. are going up because we are testing more people. In Mexico, they aren't taking it that seriously. So it's very likely they have substantially more infections. But so long as this is the perception, they're going to say no Americans don't come into our country. Kind of a funny circumstance, isn't it? The blockade was led by members of the group Sonorans for Health and Life, who called for medical testing to be done on anyone who crosses from the U.S. into Mexico. Jose Luis Hernandez, a group member, told the Arizona Republic, there are no health screenings by the federal government to deal with this pandemic. That's why we're here in Nogales. We've taken this action to call on the Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, to act now. The Mexican president has been criticized for his response to the pandemic, as has U.S. President Donald Trump. Yes, but the American people appreciate what the president is doing, and he is trying to secure the border. Mr. Hernandez said the Wednesday demonstrations were a first warning to Mr. López Obrador, popularly known by his initials, AMLO. The group has called for enforcement of the crossing ban on all U.S. or Mexican citizens for tourism or medical reasons, including those who cross the border every day to attend school or work in the U.S. Authorities must also conduct medical testing on Mexicans deported from the U.S., they said. The group have vowed to block the DeConchini checkpoint again after shutting it down on Wednesday afternoon. President Trump has made cutting the number of people crossing the border from Mexico into the U.S. a centerpiece of his administration. He blames border crossers from the South for bringing economic and social problems into the U.S. He announced last week that the frontier was to close due to coronavirus. And now, in what may be a weird, bizarro story, it's actually Mexicans protesting their government, demanding the border be shut down. Okay, the nation, can you please explain to me what your issue is? Mexican citizens themselves are complaining about this. Perhaps the border needs to be closed, and everyone agrees except you. Why? Well, they're progressives. They naturally just want to say whatever Trump does is bad, and they believe in open borders. I don't know if this writer believes in open borders, but many of them do. Now we can see how open borders really works. When the pandemic starts, Rhode Island sets up checkpoints. So yeah, I think the least we can do is secure international borders. The nation says CBP has requested 1,500 U.S. military personnel for border enforcement, citing immigrants' potential to spread infectious disease, according to an internal Department of Homeland Security memo obtained exclusively by the nation. The memo requests 1,000 military personnel to support CBP operations in the northern border and an additional 540 for the southwest border. An operation it anticipates will last through September 30th. The troops stationed there would increase CBP's capacity to protect public health and prevent the spread of COVID-19, granting Border Patrol the ability to coordinate operational use of military assets and resources. I wonder what these protesters in Mexico would think of this. Perhaps they would agree. Americans aren't supposed to be crossing either. So it's up to American enforcement to actually stop these people crossing into Mexico as well. We don't want any, look, if Mexico isn't taking this seriously and American citizens go over there, they can catch it and bring it back. We are enforcing our borders. Yes, these are trying times. We are telling people to shelter at home, and some people aren't listening. Perhaps the best we can do is enforce the borders that are already in place. I'm not saying what Rhode Island is doing is good or bad. I honestly don't know. But I can tell you what they're doing is ineffective. If right now Americans can cross into Mexico and vice versa, ineffective. So you know what? The protesters and CBP are correct in saying we need more security. And if Rhode Island really wants to prevent the spread coming from New York, you got to block traffic. Of course, they can't do that. We are allowed to travel between the states. So I don't know what the answer is. At the very least, if we can't shut down travel between the states and the virus is spreading internally, we can prevent people. Look, if someone from Mexico comes in here, they might get sick too. And if someone who's sick here, they could bring the sickness to people in Mexico. No one's going to be happy by that. We'll see how it plays out. But of course, the left will always slam Trump. Now, whatever he does, it's bad. I got one more segment coming up for you in a few minutes. Stick around. I will see you all shortly.